Hey, so today we're going to go over a little tutorial on how to edit guitars in Reaper. This is the way I edit 90% of my guitars. For this case in particular, I've sped up the tempo a little bit just so that we have to edit the track. As this performance is very good, I generally wouldn't edit it, but for this example, we will. So we're going to be using a few different functions in Reaper, one being turning on and off our snap to grid using Alt-S. Super simple. The next being S, which is split, which will just split our audio under our playhead. Then the next one will be tab, which is tab to transient, which will just take you to the next transient in the audio. Generally, I don't use tab to transient that much. It's pretty good, but usually I just use my eyeball and just eyeball it because it's faster that way for me. But for you, maybe tab will work perfectly. To change your tab to transient settings, you're going to press Control-Shift-Alt+T, and it'll pop up a little dialog box. Sensitivity on 100% is usually pretty good. I just mess with these settings depending on the source. For this one, I'm not even going to touch them. I'm just going to go through and show you how to split it rather than tab to transient. All right, so first things first, we got our first beat lined up with the grid. That's cool. Next, we're going to move to the next transient or next part that I've split, which would be around about here. Tab to transient sort of took me too deep into the notes, so I'm not even going to worry about what that wants to do. Next, I'm going to move to the next one, split that. 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 And I'm just going along, clicking, then hitting S. Click, hit S. Click, hit S. And if you'll notice, I have my grid snapping disabled for now. Click S, click S. Just doing this super rough just to get it in time-ish. All right, so we're gonna go back to the start. Cool. So this first note realistically doesn't need to be edited, but I'm just gonna move it anyway. So I'm gonna snap that to the grid there. I'm gonna snap this to the grid there. Then I just split this on the grid line, then deleted it using Control-X, then snapped it. This one, I'll snap there. This one, I'll snap there. Just going along, clicking with my grid on, S, split, Control-X, delete, drag across. Cool, next one. Cool, next one. You'll notice some of these are coming up short, and I'll show you how to do that in a second and stretch them so that they end up being more in time. But for now, we're just going to split and drag everything. So we have split and dragged the majority of what we need to do. I'm not going to worry about this little tail. Doesn't matter too much there. I'm going to go back and stretch some things. All right, so this one isn't long enough. We can do two things here. We can drag this across like that, which works pretty well. That's just crossfading and extending the audio. Sounds pretty fine. Or we can stretch it. Generally with the guitars, I don't stretch things. It can make things sound wacky if it's a chord or if there's multiple notes. Reaper's stretching with guitars in particular doesn't deal with polyphonics, so multiple notes at the same time. If it's a lead, you can get away with stretching far better than if it's a chord. I just don't like how it sounds. But anyway, for this example, I'm just going to show you how to stretch it. So we've got our audio selected. On this side, you'll see this little dialog come up, or this little marker come up. Next, I'm going to hold Alt and drag it. See how it gave us this little hand? We're going to make sure our grid's on, Alt-S, get our little hand, and snap it over. Now it's snapped to the grid, and you'll see in the details the playback rate is now slower. Generally, you'd want to change the mode here for our time shift to be tonal optimized, as we want this to sound best as possible. So we're just going to go through and stretch a couple things. Stretch that. This one needs to be... That group of notes in general should be stretched across, so I'm just going to stretch the whole thing. Then I'm going to snap that. This one, snap. Let's stretch it the other way now. If you notice my grid's on, Alt to get this little hand, snapped it that way. Just so that slide down and everything is perfectly in time. All right, now we're going to go back and we're going to crossfade all our guitars. What I like to do here is a little dialogue or marker will come up that shows you that you can pull across both waveforms at the same time. You're going to be wanting snap off, and you're going to want to drag across, and you'll see it reveals the very start of our guitar. The reason this is good is that sometimes maybe you'll accidentally cut off transients in the start of your guitar, and what that'll do is make your guitars sound less aggressive and less attacky. We don't want that. We want our guitars to sound aggressive. We want them to sound natural and have all that pick attack retained. Now, so we're going to just reveal the start of that. I don't have any arbitrary lengths that I go to. I just do it as I see fit, and that gives me a nice amount of waveform back. Cool. Then we are going to crossfade them using a reasonably short crossfade and just pull it across like that. That's it. That is kind of the basics of editing guitars in Reaper, and will, 90% of the time works every time, especially if you use a little bit of stretching. That will cover everything you ever need. I myself don't really like stretching, don't do it that much, but in certain circumstances, it definitely can work. So let's play this back and have a listen. That is very in-time guitar. If you have doubles of your guitar, like this one here, what you're going to want to do when editing in Reaper is making sure that they don't phase, or they're not edited too tightly, because this can happen if you're new to editing and you just want everything to be super tight to the grid. Maybe you'll accidentally edit stuff and it'll be like this, where these waveforms are super aligned. Now what's going to happen is it's going to narrow your stereo field. So your guitars are going to kind of sound mono. You don't want that. You want your guitars to sound spread out and huge sounding. A big part of that huge sound is that slightly different timing between performances. So the way we can get around that is we can go through and we can edit like we did before. So I'm just going to go through, cut everything. I'm not really worrying about the timing right now. I'm just putting everything in its place, because at the end, I've got a simple trick to make sure that our guitars both sound huge and in time. All right, so I'm going through, I'm clicking, I'm editing, I'm cutting. I can do the drags at the same time, so I'm doing my stretching at the same time as editing all this. Just going through, snapping everything to the grid. I'm turning on and off the grid snap as I go. So off, on, cut, and just going through and doing this all at once so that it can be done nice and quick. That function I did just then, when I just cut it and then dragged the audio inside of the lane. It's super simple to do. All it is, so I slice it, then I hold Alt, and you'll see that little arrow come up. You just drag it inside the lane. Boom. Easy way to edit guitars. Next, we're going to cut this one. You'll see I'm using this lane dragging a lot. It's just super easy to do. It's just a great function of Reaper. And super handy when you're editing guitars. All right, so I've got everything timed correctly. I'm going to drag that so that's the right timing. All right, so we're going to do our same fade thing we did before, which is, let's get this one in time. Cool. We're going to do our same fade thing. Grid snaps off. The two little arrows come up down the bottom so we can drag our waveform out. We're going to drag it out. Then what we're going to do is we're going to add an additional step. We're going to drag back using our lane dragging technique we did before. So Alt, little arrows come up, drag it back a little bit. Then we're going to do our crossfade. So we can either do it that way, and you'll see now everything is offset, and it's all offset quite evenly, so it'll sound super tight. Alternatively, instead of doing it like that, we can do our fade. So we can do our fade's there, then we can just turn snap to grid on, and with our first one selected and all the rest selected, so just that is right clicking and dragging. You bring up a big lasso. You lasso them all together, then just drag it across, snap it to grid, and they are super tight, but not phasing and not turning mono. So if we listen to that, still natural, still sounds big, sounds like a really tight performance, but is perfectly in time. That's how you edit guitars easily in Reaper. If you have any questions, let me know. Should be pretty straightforward. Make sure you watch this tutorial a few times because everything you need to know is in it. Let me know how you go. Bye.